All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, June 21st, 2024. This is your afternoon tropical video update. I feel like I owe you guys one from yesterday. Didn't get around to the video, had kind of a crazy afternoon, and just didn't have the time to get you anything quality out. So we are going to wrap up today, probably the last one for a couple of days, unless something crazy happens. But we're going to take a look at all of our players in the Atlantic Basin here this afternoon. We have, in no particular order, Invest 92L off the coast of Jacksonville in South Georgia. This kind of had some controversy with it here this morning, but that system is lashing northeast Florida with some wind and rain, but overall does not look like it's going to develop at this point. We also are tracking the southwest Gulf of Mexico again for another system. If you only tuned in on Wednesday, you would probably say, boy, it looks like Alberto hasn't moved. But in fact, Alberto already went into Mexico, completely dissipated. And now yet another system is trying to form in its wake. We also are going to be watching the main development region in the Southern Caribbean in more of a broad-natured sense, as we are seeing a healthy amount of early season activity, probably a little bit more than we would typically see in June. But any storm that did form down there, it doesn't appear to be anything serious for the U.S. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of our players here today. Invest 92L, latest satellite and radar overlay here. We are looking off the coast of Jacksonville and southeast Georgia, where we have our low-level center just spinning along. Here's the thing about this. I think me and a lot of other people thought that this was a tropical depression this morning, and I stand by that. I think that if you look at early morning, you had several hours on this loop where you've got a coherent, strong, organized, low-level vortex. You have Hurricane Hunter data supporting 30 to 35 mile an hour winds, and you have sustained thunderstorm activity along that low. Now, is it the greatest in the world? No. Is it really wrapping up shear? Not really. But I have seen the Hurricane Center name far worse, and my thing is mostly just consistency, because at some point this season we're going to name some swirl 700 miles off the coast that never hurts anybody, and we're going to give it a name, and we're going to issue products for it and go, but then for some reason when we get these storms that get near land, it's all of a sudden the Hurricane Center locks up, and they're like, oh, no, we can't issue anything. And they did the same thing last year with the storm off North Carolina, and it's just kind of like, it's not that big of a deal, because I can also see them just going, hey, this kind of looks like crap and we don't want to issue anything for it because it's not really a storm, and that would be fine. But the problem is, why do that sometimes, and other times a swirl near the Azores gets named and is a tropical storm for like 5 days? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's all my thing is. I'm not really trying to play stump the chump with the experts, because the Hurricane Center is fantastic at what they do. It's just like we get caught up in the minutia sometimes of things that don't really matter, and it's like, what was the harm? Alberta was a PTC when it looked worse than this. Alberta was a mess when they called it a PTC, and this thing, is kind of checking the boxes, even if only barely. We're not really calling it, something when it's actually impacting land. It's just a little frustrating, but that's kind of my rant about 92L. But throughout the afternoon, the Hurricane Center has kind of been proven right, because the northerly shear did start to win. If we watch this loop back and forth, you can see the first few hours, the vortex almost completely hidden under that thunderstorm canopy right there, and the thunderstorm activity very well anchored. But as we go through the morning hours, the northerly shear, which is the upper level winds pushing down on the storm, we're pushing all the thunderstorms away from that center, while the low level winds were moving along with the center in this direction. So you're going to have this crosswind, low winds going this way, upper level winds going this way. And as we go throughout the day, the 92L begins to decouple from that thunderstorm activity, and then by midday, our low-level center is completely exposed, only a tiny little thunderstorm hanging on to that down shear flank. And the thunderstorms are not really able to wrap up shear very well, and it just indicates that the storm is having a hard time in this environment, and it's just likely too dry and too much shear. It is mid-June. This is what typically happens. This is why we don't have a bunch of storms and hurricanes in June, is because although it's warm, the Atlantic typically is hostile to these kind of storms. I'm just saying that, look, we've slapped labels and names on things that looked worse than this, and that's all I'm saying. But regardless of the semantics here, you have these thunderstorms and rain showers moving onshore. Most of the actual thunderstorms that are producing lightning and stuff are a bit further to the south. That's where you're going to find more instability here this afternoon. The air generally over northern Florida is a bit more stable, so you're going to see more like heavy tropical downpours than you are going to see like thunder and lightning and things like that. But overall, you are going to see these rain showers and heavy downpours move onshore throughout tonight. And that'll last into early tomorrow before tomorrow becomes more like a typical summer day as this low kind of washes out on the coast. It will move ashore tonight. It looks like it's going to come in right along the border, maybe Nassau County, maybe Brunswick. It's probably going to come in somewhere like right here, probably just north of Jacksonville technically, but again, not actually a storm, so it's not really a landfall either. But all the weather you've been seeing this afternoon will continue through the night. It won't really get worse. What you've got is what you got. So that's kind of the rant on 92L. But again, if you're in Florida and you're wondering about the rainfall, there is more coming this week. You're going to generally have a trough in the upper levels kind of draped over the southeast, and you're going to have a much more typical summertime pattern, which means more afternoon thunderstorms, sea breeze thunderstorms. Those are going to come back. They're going to be enhanced by that trough. And you can see here about 1 to 3 inches of rain forecast through Friday. Not drought busting, but will help with the drought if you want to call it that. So that's my little deal on 92L. Let's go ahead and look at the rest of the basin here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. This is our low in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. It is getting formed up. You can see some kink in the wind flow starting. Some low pressure is trying to develop off to the west of the Yucatan. And similar to Alberto, this will probably pinwheel around back into the flow and then move right along and kind of lurch or lumber over into Mexico. Very similar pattern. If we go back to GFS here and we look this afternoon, you can see by Saturday, this is kind of the setup. Again, that same Central American Gyre pattern, lots of deep tropical moisture still over the area and a big ridge of high pressure still across the southeast U.S. And with that in mind, that just keeps us pushed down and low. And then all this just kind of pinwheels back into Mexico again. Surface or the difference overall here is you can see that the axis of moisture is much further south than it was before. So a lot of Texas and Louisiana are going to stay dry this time. And I think besides some of deep South Texas, not going to see much rainfall from this. And the onshore flow isn't as strong or as persistent. So hopefully we won't see the coastal flooding that we saw in like Corpus Christi, for example, with this system. And I don't think it's going to be as strong or as long-lived as Alberto. Wouldn't be surprised if it got named, but again, not expecting a lot with this one, and I don't think this is much of a concern for the U.S. It's just going to provide more rain to Mexico, where river flooding, mudslides, and all that terrible stuff is ongoing from Alberto's rains. This is only going to add insult to injuries. This is still a lot of tropical moisture to get cleared in and out of here, but you can see how the pattern kind of finally does break after after that storm goes. There's no more broad cyclonic circulation here anymore, and there's more of like a trough over the eastern U.S., which is indicative of more summertime weather in the southeast and not as much tropical activity down here. So after this one goes, I don't think we're going to have around 3 down there in the Gulf of Mexico, at least not right now. So models are pretty much in agreement with that. And again, rainfall totals for Texas still to come, generally an inch or so. Maybe deep Texas might get a little bit more, but not much else going on. But look at the rest of the basin before we look at the models here, just as a final note. The overall convective activity in what we call the main development region, which is that kind of conveyor belt that brings the waves off of Africa that form over in Western Africa and then move offshore, is looking pretty good for June. This is a good amount of convective activity, not like lights out, but for June, it's not bad. As we typically see, the zone here is very low right now. That's a common thing, as you see these ride just north of, or basically just over, South America. And this is common. Now, as the atmosphere continues to warm into the summer, the tropics will expand, and this tropical convergence zone will lift more up into this region. And this is where we can get the long track storms and hurricanes that move up into the Caribbean and then go into the U.S. or Gulf or whatever from there. So we will have to watch that. But there's not a ton of dry air, and there's not a ton of dust yet. So everything looks like, we could have something next week in this region trying to spin up. The models are kind of sort of hinting at it. We will keep an eye on it. But whatever does form, given this pattern, would very likely get buried in Central America. So you may see some model buzz and some, ensembles posted next week. But if we see anything, very unlikely to be any threat to the U.S. After 92L gets a shorter night and whatever this junk gets into Mexico, it looks like the U.S. is going to be good on impacts for the next at least 7 days, if not probably the rest of June and beyond that. So we're looking pretty good right now. First month of the season going along, and we've had some activity, but we're pretty much on schedule. And again, right now, no signs of imminent danger, but I urge you that this season could change in a heartbeat, so wouldn't be letting your guard down. And if you're not prepared, this is a very good time to get ready because, you know, this could get real wild real fast. But so far, so good. A couple of early warning shots, but nothing really to worry about. So that's what I got for you guys this afternoon. We will be back next time there is tropical mischief worth talking about. Until then, follow the Facebook page for all the latest updates, where we will have something daily in the tropics from here on out. So that's what I got for you guys this afternoon. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.